Okay, looks like we got just about everybody's in front here.
Let us know.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
For those I haven't met yet, I'm David. I'm teaching. This is the third part of a kind of 7-part series on, it's Rapier 101. It's kind of a crash course. Obviously, we won't cover the whole breadth and depth of everything that there is to it, but it should be enough for you to kind of go on and continue to teach yourself and absorb new lessons, that kind of thing. So, real quick, I'll do a recap of what we've covered so far. First lesson was really just like history of the weapon, nomenclature, a bunch of like really boring stuff. Last week we covered, but there were 2 important points that I want to make sure I touch back on because they're very important. So who remembers what tempo is?
So basically the timing of a strike and a parry, or any movement really.
Okay, yeah, that's one way to think about it. Any other definitions, ideas?
It's a time signature that drives you nuts in the front of the sheet of music.
Different tempo, but it can also be infuriating.
Basically, that.
So,
Jesus Christ, is every clock in this room out of sync?
Wrong, yes. Every clock is wrong.
so tempo really just arises from the fact that you can't be doing 2 contradictory motions at the same time. For example, I cannot retreat at the same time I advance. Like, once I pick my foot up, I'm locked in place for however long it takes until that action is discharged, right? So little motions make small tempi, big motions make big tempi. So what we really want to be doing is keeping our tempi as small as possible, forcing our opponents to make bigger ones, and anything that we can do to shave time off of the things that we do, that's good for us. But we also want to, as we learn and as we go along, we want to start being cognizant. We'll get into this a lot more next week as we're going to actually kind of start doing plays from some of the manuals, which were not necessarily in and of themselves like, here's the technique you should use. They were demonstrative so you understand how a tempo works and kind of like how they go from big to small. So you obviously don't want to commit a great big, like if somebody like twitches their sword arm, I don't want to be throwing this big massive lunge because they're going to have so much time to respond, right? So that's basically what tempo is. Anything that you do within striking distance of your opponent is an opportunity for them to act within that action that you made. So that's basically what tempo is. Then the other thing is measure, right? So time and place. So how far are you from your opponent? If I'm very far away from Will, I can't hit him, right? There's really nothing I can, we don't have a relation, right? And, however, as I get closer, my options for what I can hit and what has now opened up on me change, right? And I need to be cognizant of that. Further you are away, the longer the tempo it's going to be to reach them, right? And there's going to be a certain distance, and it's usually at about, it's usually at about extension distance, where I don't have to move my feet, I can just move my arm, where human reaction time is too slow to save you. So if you're in this distance, you either better have control of that weapon, or you're probably going home dead or grievously wounded. Or maybe you just don't get past the next round, or who knows, depends on what you're doing, right? So the main measures that we're looking at are out of measure. I can't reach him no matter how hard I try, like, short of hucking my blade. The other distance, or the next closest distance is passing distance, where with a passing, I can hit him, right? Then where we're actually spending most of our time is just outside of lunge distance. So Fabris refers to this as misura larga, so or basically the long measure. And that's where by lunging, I'm moving my foot. See, cover. See if I can reach him. I have more reach than he does. So with a lunge, I can hit him, right? So he still has time to act, but usually, generally speaking, if you can hit somebody else, they can hit you. Generally speaking, we'll get into the nuances of that a little later on. Lunge distance, then of course, misura stretta, where you don't have to move your feet. All you have to do is extend your hand, and you hit them. And then I like to specify another measure, which is infighting, where you're actually past the point. Like you're past the greatest threat in front of you, and now things get weird. And we can get into that in another lesson, like what do you do when you get that close? Because usually at that point you're not fencing, you're wrestling. So and I don't cover that. So that's just like the framework we're working in: tempo and measure, right? after that, I covered the duck walk. It's like your basic advance and retreat. So from a nice on-guard position, it's front foot out, and you should be able to hang out here. And then you're going to bring your back foot up and roll the front foot forward, maintaining steady, like this should be completely undisturbed. You're really just translating your body posture forward is all you're doing. Nice and smooth. And if you do this, and you do it on the regular, your footwork is going to be so silky smooth. You'll notice it, like especially if you're an experienced fencer and you commit the time to doing this, you're going to notice a night and day difference in your ease of motion. Works the same in reverse. So it's the exact same central position. So step one is here. Looks exactly the same as when I did in advance, right? Then all I have to do is draw my front leg up underneath me. That's it. Okay? So that's your advances and retreats. Eventually those smooth out, but starting here is a fantastic foundation. And it's kind of self-critiquing. If you do it just like that, you'll have good footwork. Next was the lunge. So how do we hit somebody, right? So that's going to be extend, lunge, retract, recover. So step one is full extension. My body I did not lean forward, lean back. I did not wind up. I didn't chamber anything. I simply extended my arm. That's it. Nothing else moves, okay? Then after that, you're going to lunge. Yep. Explosive action, 90-degree angle on the front foot, straight line on the back leg. Then we put in a placeholder called retract. So I might do a parry from here. I might do something weird, but anyway, usually I have somebody do like a circle parry out to here or something. And then your recovery, you're going to break this line, pop that knee out basically, and then your weight's going to drop back, right? So you just give that a little assist with your front leg, and then you're back on guard. So again, starting position should be the exact same as the finishing position. Always coming back to the exact same spot. Yes?
If I may interject and request for the new people how to properly hold a rapier.
Okay, oh yes, if you have never held a rapier before, then you should show up for lesson 1. All right. Basically, we're gonna do there's a couple different ways of holding a blade, and each one is gonna give you different like benefits or they're just a little bit different. Both of them are acceptable. So one is a single finger, do the cross guard, maybe bracing along the ricasso with your thumb, and holding it that way. So yep, so that's one way of doing it. This one is great for cuts because you're already you're chambered for it. You got all your bracing, all your body positioning is reinforcing that cut. But the rapier's not really a cutting weapon. You can cut with it, but that's not really making the most out of the weapon. So instead, what I teach is a 3-point, basically classical Italian foil. So thumb here, ricasso resting on the forefinger, and then your third finger or middle finger resting on the crossbar.
Unless you have exceptional large hands. I think that'll stick by basketball.
Depends on your sword. Depends on your sword. If you don't have room in your sword, you don't have room in your sword. It would be foolish to try to force it, right? Just on principle. So if you seriously do not have room in your sword, don't try it. Just do the single finger loop. It's fine. So, but this one's I got like room for a hotel in this basket, so I can do what I want. Okay, so that's the recap. That's what you missed so far. So on today's episode, well, we're going to start with the foreguards. So Faber tells us that nothing can be affected outside of the foreguard, which basically means like everything you do is going to fall into one of these foreguards. I don't like that they use the word guards because it can be kind of confusing. It's better to think of it as a station of the hand. It's basically an orientation of the way that you're holding your sword in relation to your opponent. Some of them, and they all have, again, with everything, it's benefits and drawbacks. You're going to make trade-offs with every position. But the first position is called prima, and they refer to it as the position where you'd be if you once you draw your sword. So basically, it is knuckle bow pointed toward the ceiling. and it is super awkward. Super awkward. You actually might even have to tilt your shoulders down a little bit to get that perfect straight up and down biz, right? So this one's very tiresome. Fabrice advises that if you're gonna hold your blade in this, like statically in this position, that you withdraw your feet, bend the body down. You kind of do this sort of action.
So you're kind of turtle.
I'm not for it. But what it's usually what this actually functions better as is a finishing or transitional position. So frequently what I will use it for is when we get into pressure plays, we'll cover more stuff like this. Is if he presses my sword to the inside, I can do something like this. I am in first. The ending position is a first guard. And again, this is why I refer to it as a station of the hand, because you're going to move through all of these as you go. So that's prima. Don't hang out a whole hell of a lot in there. It's good for defending a cut to the head on that side, but outside of that, it's very awkward and tough to work with. Next.
Just because I was just watching a video on this week. Like here is these machines for chambering a cut. If like even though it's not primarily cutting weapon, this is from here you can
deliver a cut. Yeah.
Now is that naturally if you lunge into that naturally curves your target area slightly, doesn't it? Like where you're aiming.
A little bit. So really, if you want to be attacking from this angle,
Yeah.
like you're gonna be strong up here, fairly weak down here.
Yeah.
But the whole idea is that you're just like, if your opponent insists on being above you,
Yeah.
then sure. But really, it's very awkward to try to place this anywhere. So yeah. I mean, so the next station downwards, we're going to move 90 degrees from here. And so prima, which means first. So I'll use these terms interchangeably depending on how frisky I'm feeling. But it's first or prima, second or seconda. And this is where your knuckle bow is facing outward, the flat, the bottom, basically your palm down, right? So this position is also a little bit tiresome and awkward, but it has some kind of peculiarities that are really interesting. So the first one is that it's actually the furthest amount of reach that you can get by about 1/2 to 1 inch. So it's really, if I can give you a demo here, come here. So hold out your hand, oh that works too, yeah that works. So here, and then when I rotate my hand to fourth, you can see there I actually lose about 1 inch, 1/2 inch distance, right? So doesn't really matter a whole lot, but if you need just that little extra bit of reach because you want to get there just a moment faster, that's something you can do. It also can reach a little bit further than you think. Because another thing that enables you to do, you're going to see this a lot in low line passes. So let's say I feint up here and he brings his tip up. What I can do, your tip, not your heel, up. So tip up. Yeah, there we go. If I come here, so if I turn in fourth, this is really awkward, right? It's really, really awkward. This is perfect though. Like it's straight as an arrow right through my feet. You see it under his hilt. So if you're going for a low line pass, this is a good position to be in. A lot of people will also parry in this position, so lunge here. They'll do kind of one of these things, maybe. I find this also awkward because you have a break in the wrist, which inherently weakens the structure of your defense, so we really don't want to be doing that. And it's fairly easy to collapse. So it's weird because you think your forte would be super strong on the outside, and it kind of is, but it's very easy to collapse. And the area where it's actually strongest and all practically impossible to move is on the inside, but like I'm already open on the inside. It doesn't really help me there, right? So again, secondas for me is a more transitional position. Like you'll be there, you'll use it occasionally, but it's not somewhere you want to hang out, right? So down another 90 degrees from seconda is terza, or third. And this is like your vanilla bread and butter central position. So everybody likes to hang out here. It's very easy to do disengages with your hand positioned this way. You're usually going to be already chambered for a cut on either side. The only real kind of sad thing about it is that your flat is oriented toward your left and your right? And your flat is weak. So it's very easy to push somebody around on the flat of their blade. So while it's in third, if I wanted to push William around here, it's not hard to do. Even if you resist with all this might, like, it's not hard to do. You know, I can even take the weak part of my sword and still push him around. Like, so inevitably you're going to wind up transitioning to a different hand position, but as a kind of middling, flexible starting position, third is great. It's also very comfortable in the hand. The last one is cuarta or fourth, and that's with your palm up. And this one's my bread and butter. This is where I love to hang out. So any of you who've done like epee might recognize this as like practically a sixth guard, right? That's essentially like it's the sixth guard builds on all of the strengths of cuarta. You're gonna be strong on the inside because the true edge of your blade is oriented in that direction. You're gonna be extremely strong on the outside because your wrist alignment, your wrist doesn't want to bend in that direction. You may also have a brace against your forearm. So you're really not going to be able to push that around. You're going to be dealing with all of my gross musculature here, trying to push me around on that one. Not real good. The main drawback of this is that disengages are a bit slower, and that's kind of the main part of it. I'm really fond of fourth. I like being out there. I think it's a good, strong position and usually you're going to wind up moving there anyway. So, all of this is to say when I say like, give me a lunge in like cuarta, or give me a lunge in fourth, that you know how your hand should be oriented, kind of a thing. So, any questions so far? Thoughts, concerns?
What is the, so when we were doing saber, you know, it's a very elbow, hilt down kind of a guard. Is that basically the same guard, or do you want to be more, you seem like you demonstrate all these very extended.
Yes, yeah.
So is that the beginning or the end point?
That's the beginning point.
Okay.
You want to be more extended. I'm gonna get into that in a second because I'm right about to get into. I'm gonna give you guys a basic guard because I don't want you like anybody to walk out of here like not having something practical that they can use. I'm gonna give you all like just like the core guard that I teach everybody because I feel it's better to have one simple defense that may not work in every situation, right? But it's one simple, reliable defense. Is way better than having like a brain full of complex defenses that you don't know how to use, right? So this one's a really good, solid home base. It's reliable, and it works. So what we're gonna do is you're just gonna come on guard, and you'll just be in fourth. So that's basically hand will be positioned either you can place it maybe here if you want, or I prefer it up by my head. The whole idea there is that if somebody's coming on your inside, then you don't accidentally catch a sword on this side. Your hand is also positioned to make a parry, and we'll get into offhand stuff in another lesson. But your hand is positioned really well to make those parries. Now, major point of order, right? So, if you guys all take a look at my frame, you guys might want to bunch in so you can take a good look. I'm not here. Okay. See the difference between the two? Okay. So the alignment that you want your arm to be in is like you're gonna let your sword dangle by your side. You're just gonna lift straight up in that plane. Okay. Try to imagine that you're standing in a hallway or a corridor that is so narrow that it only fits just as wide as your shoulders are. Okay. What you want to do is you want to raise your blade up right against the edge of that wall. Just straight up, and then you'll turn your hand palm up. That's it. Okay? That's the idea. So, what this does, right there, right? There. That's strong. That's strong. Okay. You're gonna feel a little open to your outside. You're gonna feel a little open. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, you're doing. So this is one of the still pretty.
I can't fit the 2-finger one in the.
Yeah. That's pretty good. If you're gonna do, if you have that, you might just switch, like just in practice, start in third, and you might just have to bring that out a little further. But be aware that you're gonna be a little bit open on this side. The important thing is I can't dump it into your box. Like, I'm gonna have to come. If I want to do that, I have to take an angle, right? So, ooh, lefty. Okay. So. Okay. So the whole idea is that I should not be able to hold still. Right? I should not see how it's defending you by the barest amount. Like it's just a half an inch away, but it might as well be a mile, right? And if you're not over parrying, because check this out. So if you extend and I over parry, now I'm not threatening you, right? I've removed my point from your presence. You're not really threatened by it anymore. Versus, in this case of you, you've already got that pre-parried. That point is still in line. I'm still in a lot of trouble. In fact, I probably walked right onto your shoulder, right? That's what you want, okay? Stick a look at you. That looks good. Point foot toward me. Bend those knees, relax. Yeah, that looks hot, I like that. Awesome, okay, good. Okay, and you're using a single finger loop as well.
That is one thing.
So, yeah, I might catch
Big
Gambeson,
jack,
but yeah, that's not bad. Yeah, so with the single finger loop, again, you're probably, to get a good solid defense on the outside, you're probably gonna have to bring that point just a little out of presence. And when you go, which it'll close up when you make your extension, that'll close up.
Just as a resting.
Right. So, but just be aware of that, because
You're not
as your opponent, I'm probably gonna try to pick that up.
bunched up.
Absolutely.
Pick that up.
And
So,
ready
now,
to move
why?
wherever you need to move.
Don't do that. No long sword stance.
Good pull arm.
Your forearm level with the floor. Bingo. That was fun. Okay. Now if I try to hit you, you don't even have to move.
All right.
You should not have to move. If you have to move, you're doing it wrong. Gotcha. Okay. So literally, you don't even have to do anything. I can't hit you. So you have at least one zone of your body that you don't have to worry about. You know, I have to come somewhere else. So something else you'll notice that is a theme in like the way I think and the way I teach. We want to narrow our opponent's options down, and rather we want to make them more predictable. So the more predictable I can make you, the better off I'm going to be, because then I don't have to think, right?
So why do we let you teach us?
What's that?
So why do we let you teach us then?
So you can do that to Ramsey.
It's already easy enough to do.
So again, if I know that you can't hit me on the high outside, I know which side you have to come on. Or you're gonna have to pull me out of that in order to get what you want on this side. So now we're fencing, right? Now the game's on. So to your point about whether to keep the arm extended or close, I actually do have a fun drill for everybody if you want to put your hats on. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to stand lunge distance away from each other. One person gets to lunge, unrestricted. You're not going to move around. This is not a footwork exercise. This is a purely blade work oriented defensive exercise, okay? So, and again, we're not trying to hurt people. We're trying to make just trying this out because I want to prove a point. So, the attacker can lunge at anywhere on the torso, okay? Up in the torso. The defender has to keep their elbow pinned to their side and has to defend, okay? Now the attacker can make disengages, right? Ideally, we really just want to do straight line attacks though, okay? So, everybody partner up. Does everybody have a partner?
That's an odd number.
Okay, I'll pick up Josh over here. So, try it out, and then give it maybe 5 or 6 passes, and then we'll then trade off rolls, and then we'll meet up again. So give it 5 or 6 passes. Yeah.
Do we want to have a more experienced person with the more people?
Ideally, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Here.
lunging?
I'll be lunging for you.
Okay.
Ready?
Well, I'm gonna find lunges first.
So you're lunging to attack me. You're lunging? Oh, I'm lunging? What you're wanting to do, you're wanting to start already mostly extended. And that, do a full.
Hard with the elbow pin.
Yeah.
That's one.
Easy for you?
Yeah.
So not too close.
I can't do the elbow pin, man.
It's a little wacky, right? Notice how you're getting
Oh, you mean the arm thing? Yeah, that's wrong.
And then you just send your sword anywhere, not anywhere, so.
Right. So you're making big
Stay on.
forward motions to try to finish it. Right? Now try it on me. So go ahead. So extend.
I don't know how to do that one with the elbow there.
Yeah.
Like, what am I supposed to do?
Well, I think that's part of the point.
Part of the drill is like, I'm
realize.
just gonna get hit in the head a lot? Okay.
Well, like just to realize the advantage of having your arm out further is it's tucked in like this.
Yeah.
That's kind of like being a T-Rex.
So you
level.
don't feel like
Alright, you want to switch roles?
Oh, yeah.
Probably
Yeah,
better.
definitely on that side of it.
Oh, so you're trying to.
Let me just check.
Oh, yeah.
See, I keep.
Yeah.
I keep blocking it.
Try and hit me.
Okay, I'm gonna hit you. You're sanding the fence.
You're supposed to do.
Alright.
Don't know what I missed.
Fully protected.
Second is love
Okay. Do you want to reverse the scene?
I'm gonna show you.
So, I was mainly watching your lunge form to make sure.
How are we looking, guys?
Alright.
Yep.
Does everybody have a chance to parry like a dope?
Yeah.
Yeah?
That is not effective.
Okay, so did everybody feel a little silly doing that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna explain to you exactly what. Have you noticed that even if you were able to get the parry across, you had to make these big, wide, huge motions. If your
And it
opponent
rarely
was
worked?
kind enough to lunge straight through your forte, right? Then maybe you could get a parry, but it's still gonna be very, very wide, right? And if they attack upward, like through the weak part of your blade, there's nothing you can do. They're just gonna collapse you, right?
Alright.
So, what we want to do is keep our arm somewhat short of full extension, is the idea. So a lot of people will say, about a fist worth. I say a little bit more than that, just a bit more than that. The reason why is the same reason why a 5-degree difference at an inch doesn't mean very much. But if you follow that out for a mile, the difference is huge, right? The deviation is huge. The sooner you start the deviation of your opponent's blade, the more room you have to work with, right? So, I'm sorry, you name?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. So if Elizabeth attacks me, right? So go ahead, give me an extension. Just give me an extension. There we go. Okay. So if I deviate her blade by 5 degrees here, it doesn't clear me, right? If, however, I start the deviation out here, now I'm safe, right? So what I'm doing is I am taking this and I'm making it as large of an obstacle to her as I can, right? So the further out there this is, the more of an obstacle it is. The harder it's going to be for her to work around it. She's going to have to make larger disengages to get to the other side. I'm going to have more strength because my forte is deeper into the space between us, right? Now, do I want to be fully extended though? Completely locked? Like this? Is this going to work for me? You want to do a drill where you guys try to defend yourself like this? Sure. Not going to work. Not going to work, right? And another thing too is she knows exactly what my reach is at this point because I'm fully extended, right? The only place I have to go is backward, right? So if she goes to claim my sword, right? She goes to get control of it. The only way I can go deeper to try to, so she's got this good leverage here, right? I'm like, come on, boss me around. There we go, that's better. So the only way I could really overpower that is by either switching sides, right, which is not really overpowering, or getting deeper to where now I can push her around. But I don't have anywhere to go. I'm already fully extended, so I have to commit my feet. And Harrison, man, like you were like right in front of the camera.
Oh, right. I forgot about the camera, sorry. I completely forgot about the camera.
That reminds me, Ramsey, we apologize for the joke earlier.
I was just trying to stand out of the way of the lessons.
So just again, a quick demo. So yeah, so you got control. And even with this little epee, slight flimsy metal thing, right? She can still boss me around. She can still like bigger than her, and my sword is like way heavier, but she can still boss me around, right? If I'm fully extended and she's got me, I have to commit my foot to regaining control, right? Or I'm gonna have to upset my frame some other way, right? If I'm not fully extended though, as she goes to get that, now I can extend into that, and now she's in trouble, right? So I want to give myself a little bit of room to work with, but I want my sword to be out, kind of owning the space in between us, right? This is fundamental stuff. This is like good home base stuff. As you guys progress and get better and better, there's gonna be less and less contact, and you'll need to have that out there less and less. But for starting out, this is a good place to be, okay? You want to keep that weapon in between yourself and your opponent.
And for starting out, so you have it extended but not fully. You don't want the elbow tight at all, do you? You want to keep
No, yeah. So your wrist, so again, your wrist. So you want a straight line from tip to elbow. A straight line from tip to elbow, right? You really don't want to be moving this wrist around much. So ideally, you want a nice brace straight line from tip to elbow, and then elbow nice and and shoulder relaxed. Notice what I'm doing here is I'm not moving my shoulders to get him, right? He is not seeing this. I'm not committing my torso to this action. I am simply, I'm gonna reach out and get that if I want, right? So in any case, the on guard position, you want a straight line from tip to elbow. And again, he doesn't have a shot on my high outside. I know where he's gonna go. This is a great home base to be, right? Your opponent, and with the tip just slightly upward, just slightly up. We don't want it like flat straight down. Reason for that is because it's very easy to grab your blade. So if he's flat like this, I'm gonna be like, it's gonna take almost no effort from me to get control of him and do something, right? But if he has his tip just slightly upward, then he's got his point in presence. I can't walk toward him, right? I have to deal with this, but in order to do so, I'm gonna have to come up on his level, right? Which is gonna be a big motion that he's gonna be able to spot. It's gonna give him more time to react. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So just a slight, not so much that you're really opening up your not so much that like you don't want to offer a big target here, but okay. All right, so that's kind of like your home on guard. So everybody, try it out. So come on guard. I'll just check everybody. Do one more kind of scan, and then we're gonna move on to what makes the sword strong or weak, and kind of how to approach your opponent. Because one thing I do notice a lot, especially with like newer fencers, there's a lot of double kills. Watch a HEMA tournament. It's double, because nobody's defending themselves. Right?
Watch Olympic fencing and it's even more.
Yeah.
The one landing on that one? Yeah.
All right, so rush on guard. So cross yourself up, put this back here. There you go. Squeeze a bit. You're good. I'm not gonna hit you. He's bent. There you go. Weight evenly distributed. That looks good.
No, but it's,
Just slightly up. This is great. This is great because I have to bring my tip up to deal with that. You have not revealed your wrist. So if you go completely flat, your wrist is perfectly protected, but now I can grab your sword really easy.
I might do that.
If your tip is just slightly up, you open your wrist just a little bit, right? So you be aware of that. I can maybe try to attack that.
Well, I'm not doing
But
it.
really, the main thing is I can't just, if I want to reach your sword, I have to bring my tip up to get over. So that's pretty good. Awesome. You're still shielding a bit to the inside. There.
Oh,
A little further in. Bingo. That's perfect. That's really good. I don't really have that wrist. I don't have that shot on the bicep. And yeah, and your tip is just slightly up. I'm gonna have to reach up to get it. That's a really good palm guard. You're using a single finger.
Two.
Two. Okay. Maybe choke back just for choke back just a little bit. Is your here?
Yep.
Should I
Just don't like that. Just
both of them pushes? It's a bitch to get on that. Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So nice to take off.
I think this is really more like your guard's not very big.
Yeah.
So you need to be aware of that.
Okay.
So he's probably gonna try to pick that up, but I do not have the direct line hit on your bicep.
Okay.
That's good.
Yes, it is.
So it's almost, I feel like
I mean, I would not put it past him. It's especially.
I almost feel like I'm pulling, have to pull this in slightly to compensate for.
Yeah, you are. It looks a little awkward.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're like down here, so you're having to do this. Oh my gosh, I bet that's more comfortable.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, good. Good, yeah, that looks good, okay. Foot behind me. Bend those knees. Slight elevation.
I'm sure Eric does too. Workshops in the house if that's going to come up for a handful.
Okay.
Sort of maintenance party.
There you go. See, your instinct, I promise, your instinct is gonna be to resist me when I do that. Do not. Do not. Because one of the first things I'm gonna do when I fight you, and I see you in this position, I promise you, the first thing I'm gonna do is push on this side. And if you overcorrect back in this direction, I know I'm okay. Yeah, this will be easy, right? So,
Then perish.
the response is not to resist, but to extend. So as you feel me coming in here, extend. Don't resist.
Okay.
Just extend. Let the sword do the work. Okay? You have so much leverage here, even with both hands, I can't do anything about it. Okay? So relax. Right? Make sense? And shoulders up. Step out just a little.
Yeah.
There. Do you feel wide open over here?
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's okay. You should. Here's the thing to keep in mind, guys. If you don't feel open somewhere else, then that means you're probably open everywhere. Okay? So if I approach somebody and I come up with this like middling guard here, like against Will, see this? This middling guard, am I protected on either side? No. So I don't know which side you're gonna come on, which means I'm very easy to feint. I'm very easy to mess with and control because I have no control in this space, right? So my desire to protect everything at once is gonna make me lose everything. So instead I'm gonna pick a side, say, I trust that you can't come here. I know physically you can't. You can't come here. So now I know which side you're gonna come on, right? That's the idea. That's the idea. You want to restrict your opponent's options down so you have to think less and you're harder to control because you have something you can rely on. You're protected on that high outside line. So again, you should be in a guard and trusting that guard. This fourth, you can't hit me on the outside. Sorry, you can't. Physically, you can't. So if I see you coming to this side, I shouldn't have to parry the outside. If I'm parrying the outside, you're controlling me now. My outside's already covered. What am I doing, right? If you come to this side, I should just poke you in the face for being dumb and coming into a closed lane, right? So remember that. Close that line. It's okay that you feel open somewhere else because you're going to. Everything that you do is a trade-off. Everything you do is a trade-off. If you make a motion within striking distance of your opponent, that's something that's locking you into a tempo that they can take advantage of, right? Everything you do comes at a risk when you're sitting in front of another human being with a sharp object, okay? So, at least you, in the case of the outside line, you have something you can rely on, okay? Over. So strike that foot. There we go.
Yeah, I did the thing. Did the thing you said not to do.
Yep. Just a little more extension. A little more extension there. Okay. Yep. Come back on there. I want to see it. you shouldn't even have to move. You shouldn't even have to move. I shouldn't be able to do that. That's right. So that's probably where you want to be.
Okay.
That there is probably where you want to be.
Got it. It's a lot further than I thought.
Yeah. See that?
Yep.
Yep. Harrison? One foot toward me. Okay, so bring that out a little further. There. Yep. Make sense? Okay, so that is a good home base. That's a good jumping off point from the other actions that we can do. Okay? Now you can hang out, so again, fourth, third, doesn't so much matter, right? Second is a little tough to manage there, right? It's not gonna be very strong, but you can be in third and move to fourth. But starting in fourth is very, very strong. So I recommend that to people. Okay. Speaking of, man, it's already been. Well, let's take a water break real quick. And then give it 5 minutes, 5 minutes water break, and then we'll reconvene and talk about what makes swords strong at all. The metal. The metal. You got it.
The lady of the lake.
Yeah, something like that.
So I want to help you with
Water retards distributing swords.
Oh, are you booking me a trip somewhere? Thank you. How do you
I mean, I can sort of do lightsaber stuff, but I'm still out on my left hand. So, and I always
okay,
press one hand anyways.
Right.
You know what? Let's leave this off. Okay? Just for a while.
I work.
I'm still on the fence about what to even wear. Like, I like the shoulder pads, but it's just more flexibility. Well,
I want to go out and
Do you have anything over that?
I just don't particularly want to.
Yeah, like a thwack in the shoulder is gonna hurt.
Yeah.
with a lightsaber anyway.
With a lightsaber, yeah.
And I've got pads I can put on the outside. I just got these, honestly.
Dismisses.
You don't happen to
To the
teach
ground,
pole arm, do you?
You can try and make it.
Well, I say, 'cause this has my interest, but the other one.
Pole arm?
Yeah, pole arm.
Okay. We can find it, and I'm sure if we got some, we got some.
Love that one.
I'm probably gonna end up wearing this thing on those and just hope I don't get it.
Is
All the places,
busting
if all the places I get hit.
If you are
At least that.
No,
I don't feel like it'll impact me immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're getting hit in the shoulder, then probably doing something wrong to begin with.
Not wrong.
Because like taking a thrust to the gut or something like that, kind of understand. If you take a slash to the shoulder, you're really open or really far in.
Yeah, and this is way better for where I
Yeah.
It's all around this
Yeah,
period.
we can,
No deal.
Very
I think Joe has one of the club candlesticks, so we probably can't do that unless somebody else has one.
true. Yeah, we can't. Yeah, because we broke his last time.
I've heard that.
Oh yeah, yep. We were fighting, and then we had an exchange, and he went in. We went in, had another exchange, and his single stick just kind of.
As I mentioned,
Yep.
because the rattan splits like that with the band, it looks like this, right?
One of the reasons rattan is better. How are you guys doing? Been a little while. Early
David, I was trying out the duck walk with, it almost seems like with the fabric, you kind of on the lean back, on the back, but it's easier to do the duck walk when you have.
You guys were
Yeah.
We decided if you get your footwork.
Because your back foot should be loaded, your weight and weight should be over it.
Right.
I mean, it's
Classic
if you're doing
slash
it, it's
Olympic
gonna be
sailor
about
on Thursday.
Yeah.
like you're not gonna be perfect or lighters and balance, but it is better to be balanced than one back, right?
They are. If it is lightsaber, we will specify
One,
typically
it's gonna make your
energy
lunge
sword because not
not to stick.
Yeah.
Because the force can
Otherwise, if it is just said saber,
can take better advantage of
the
friction.
And when you're like, when you have, when you're on the ball of your back foot, do you still go flat to the lunge? Or do you keep on the ball?
No, I keep on the ball.
Yeah, that's why I was over there to begin with, and then standing in front of the camera on it. accident because I was gonna turn on the fan and I thought they moved like inline styles.
Fighting on the round. Yep, because the weapons got like shorter and smaller and faster, to where fighting in a circular, the blades got faster than the body, basically. So, and really, fights almost always end in a line anyway, to be honest. Like, you might see people like dunk around, like being in a circular fashion, but if you watch, the fight always ends in a line anyway. So at some point, somebody commits in a linear fashion, and then their play works out. You know what I mean? So I think for brevity's sake, they just made it up. Story line. But I could be wrong about that. That's a sign. The same reason they got one about hand weapons. So like once you move the small sword, like that weapon is way faster than you might as well just exactly. You might as well just keep your sword in line. So that's gonna be a lot better defensively than these are heavy and slow by comparison. So it changes the game fundamentally.
Well, it's like if your weight's like dead center instead of shifted to one side or the other, like you're going in a straight line, so you just change direction really quick instead of here it's a little more awkward to switch one way or the other.
Yeah. Okay, everybody about ready? Okay, so we're gonna before we break for today, I'd like to cover at least two more things. The main thing is we're gonna go over is parries. Before we get into parries, I want to talk about like kind of the mechanics. This is the kind of like theory stuff you make so these guys go like we're gonna get to play with it at once. What makes a sword strong? Like, why is your sword stronger than your opponent's? Like what things do we need to be thinking about so that like somebody twice my size can't just like why doesn't the huge guy just always win, right? Well, because we have this tool that has certain qualities about it that let us kind of level the playing field, right? So the first one is leverage, right? So we've got the weak part of our sword in increasing degrees of strength. Now, depending on which master you listen to, they'll divide it into like very specific like areas of strength, but it's much better to think of it as a gradient. Generally speaking, this is your turf, right? Or your opponent's turf, and you don't want to be anywhere near it because then they have control, right? Here is like the no man's land. It's kind of like where a lot of the struggle is. And then up here, this is the business end, but you can't push anybody around it. Okay? It's about as simple as that. But all things being equal, the person who has more of their forte into that space between you is going to be the stronger. So here, just going to be a quick example. So let's say we're just third. Yep. So blades together. And we're all going to get to try this, right? So he pushes on me. Okay, I push back. Yeah, that's tougher, but we're about even, right? Now, if I push more of my sword into his and he starts pushing, a little tougher, right? There's only a difference of a couple of inches, right? Like I'm literally just utilizing I'm using the flat to push him around for crying out loud, right? So that's because I got more of my sword in his. Now if he extends a little deeper and he pushes, no, nothing I can do, right? So everybody throw hats on. We're gonna try this. We're gonna explore this space, and it's even funnier because you've got a net blade and it's still gonna work. Oh, good. Everybody's got a partner. So go ahead, come on. So what I'm gonna have you guys do is you're gonna come on guard in third rather than fourth. Again, this is for demonstrative purposes.
Sorry, I showed up.
No,
So
You even did that, Jake.
Yeah.
There's exactly 8 people now.
Yeah, you're good. So come on guard and really.
Yeah, I'll go with you.
You guys want to have like the middle of your swords crossed.
I was gonna say. Wait,
Now,
lefty.
you're gonna try to push the other person with your flat only. Flat only. So come deeper. Come deeper. You want to be meso to meso. You want to be middle to middle. Okay, middle to middle. Okay. and you're gonna press in with this side, with the flat of your sword. Okay. So if you guys now go ahead, try to push each other around, right? So the whole idea here is that if you're right in the middle, if you've got more wrist strength, you probably
Yeah, you're as strong as me anyway.
engine out.
I'm so young.
Now,
So
you've explored that. Now, whenever you
better stance than I'm just like,
in,
right.
you can
Please step.
you can either step a little bit or you can extend your arm a little bit.
Well, it does help that mine is like not the same
It's a
shape.
bit weird, yeah, it's weird, but it's still the same principle.
Really feel the thing with that. Push with the flat. Push with the flat. Push with the flat.
Push me around a little bit.
For this.
I didn't worry about this one. It's so, yeah, that is a flexi sword. Yeah, the higher up you move, leave me.
You guys got the idea?
Here.
Makes
There
sense?
you go,
Okay.
yeah.
So this is when I talk about depth, this is what I'm referring to, is how deep is your forte into your opponent's blade, right? So if you want forte or the lower part of the meso up against their upper part of their meso, about it only takes like 2 or 3 inches of leverage to really make that difference, but it makes a huge difference, as you guys can kind of tell, right? So the next thing that we can use to make our sword strong is the orientation of our hand, right? So remember, the true edge of the blade is the one that you cut with, right? That's this one. The reason we cut with that side is because that's, like, ergonomically speaking, that's how we're designed.
And just for people who are new, the true edge is the one that's lined up with the wrapper
Yes. Yeah. With the front of your knuckles. So if you're going to deliver a cut, that's how you're going to do it. That's the true edge. So the more directed your true edge is towards your opponent's blade, the more leverage you're going to have. Okay. So here's another. So we're going to try that same setup again. Get to an equal. Like get to where you guys are about equal, and then one of you will turn your blade toward the other. You're not going to get any deeper. Okay. You're just going to turn your blade toward the other one. Turn your knuckles toward the other blade, and then push. I want to see what happens. Go ahead and try that.
Alright. You turning into me? No, you go first. Okay. Right here. About even.
I'm going to be pushing on the same spot.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah, that's much better. I don't really have to grip up here. Less on turn this way.
Feel that?
That's me. Yeah. Cannot win.
Yeah, just since you're left-handed, you'll be training this like on the so that
Like push with your flat and then turn it while you're pushing still. Like the difference is so weird. Like it feels like the other person is doing it on purpose. Yeah.
makes sense.
So remember how I said we were talking about Seconda being a little weaker, right? You don't really see quite that same effect in Seconda, do you? So on the inside, in Corta, we see that. So now I can shove him around. In Seconda,
But like, if she's left-handed, then she's training the true edge, and
yeah, she's going to be on your outside. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, so
So this is Corta for her.
okay,
So so there you go. Yeah, you're turning your hands to the inside. He's on your outside. Now you should be able to shove him around while you like. Right. Like really give her some. Like give her.
The stance is kind of like that. Yeah. It's almost always like a finishing slash solution with Nesser. If you're supposed to like drop it.
Okay.
You drop and you cut like that. And then here.
Make sense, guys?
That's German style.
Okay.
Yeah. It's German long so basically. I'm terrible at it. So much ground to cover.
All right. So the third thing that's going to make your blade stronger than your opponent is angulation. I call it a ramp. Is one way to think about it. It took me forever, like reading Fabres, because I didn't understand it. Because he would say the sword is always stronger on the side to which it points. What the hell does that even mean? I don't. What? Okay, whatever. What he means, what he's talking about, is there's an angle you can create with your weapon that is going to basically suck your opponent's tip into your hilt. And this is angulation. ramping, whatever you want to call it. It's interesting. So on guard loading. So can everybody see? So we're back in that middle middle ground, no man's land. So give me that shove, push. Okay, we're about even, right? If I turn my blade over here, now push. Now who's the boss? Right? And I didn't go any deeper into his guard. I could have even done it simply by doing this, and notice how it sucks his blade right into my point. Now, of course, you get a little stab there. So we're going to accompany with this with a turning of the fingers, right? We're going to accompany this because I want this, right? Because now that brings his point out of presence. But the principle still holds. The principle still holds. If I want to make use of this effect, as he presses, I give him this angle, and it's going to come right down. So you guys want to get behind me so you can see what I'm doing a little better? Get behind my shoulder so you can you guys can get close in front of me. Okay. So he presses. I didn't say lunge. So press back against me. Okay, cool. Keep pressing. Right? So the more he pushes, the more he gets sucked into my hilt. Okay? That's what Fabris talks about when he says the sword is stronger on the side to which it points. I'm pointing to this side, so I'm going to be strong on this side. I'm pointing to this side, I'm going to be strong on this side. Is that kind of jiving? Okay, so we're going to drill this too. So I want you guys to pair up again. You can switch partners if you like, just for verisimilitude. But try this out and kind of explore. It's a little weird. It's a little weird. So really play with it.
Start on the flat, right?
Yep. Get to that flat metal. So, yep. And then point right. So as you're still pressing, point like that. And the more you press, you'll find what's happening to your sword. It's slipping. Okay. So again, in a perfect world, as he presses, as I do this, and he presses down, my point is not going to have to be too far out of presence, so that it just drops right in there, and I've got him dead to rights, right? So, but if I have to bring if I bring my tip out of line a little bit, it's not that big of a deal because it's literally just a flick of the wrist to bring it right back in. So don't be afraid of going a little bit wide. Normally I don't advise it, but in the case of me like taking complete control of his weapon, it's okay. And you can try this on the outside too. Try this on the outside too.
Do you want me to push into you? Go ahead. So that push.
You want to try to push?
But I want to trip this time. So yeah. Can you demonstrate that?
So come on back. Okay. So press.
Alright, let's try again. So you're pushing to your left, right?
Instruction
Nice.
and you go.
Twist this way.
On the outside, right?
Which ramps it up to my outside.
Yep. So you're going to do that to me.
So if I'm pushing, you're going to twist.
Just
like that.
The shoulder.
So I guess I'm thinking when I'm pushing, I'm also trying to hold my wrist and my sword.
Yeah, no, I know he said something about how to do it on the inside.
It's an interesting point though, because for a lefty, right?
So
Your point is now way out of presence. Like mine is too.
Yep.
It's kind of a weird kind of hard for you to turn that into something useful.
also if your blade perfectly cuts
Point
Well, no,
is that you can
point
do
it
that
slightly off. You suck into my back. And then once you're there, I have. If your point is point it.
Yep.
It's a little harder to do circulation.
Now, ideally, you want to be doing that with this.
Oh.
See, now he's not pointing right at your chest. The important thing is the mechanism. So yeah, you could do that. There might be some circumstance where that's desirable. I don't know, right? But the idea is feeling out like, yeah, there's that ramp that I created, and bam, it sucks
Try
right
to
in.
figure out how to do that on the inside. So if I'm on your inside,
So, when we talk about pointing, right? So here's a really interesting, like, weird Rapier. Yeah. So we're on guard, right? If we're on the outside.
Okay, stop right there.
Yes.
Who's on the outside of what? What is the outside?
The outside.
His blade is on your outside?
This is the outside.
Sure.
This is the inside.
Okay. Well, like when you're referencing when we're on the outside, what are you talking about? His blade?
Yes, on the outside of his sword. Yep. So, high line, low line,
Yeah.
inside, outside, and it's going to be almost, when we talk about that, it's going to be usually in relation to the blade. Now, I mean, if it's like blades all the way down here, I mean, basically everything's highlighted.
Everything's here.
You know, so, bearing that in mind.
So you're always referencing your relationship.
Yes. So even if I'm over here, we're still on each other's outside, even though I'm pointing toward his
inside.
high inside. Like, you could roughly call this like high inside line, like targeting, right? But yes, our blade relationship is that I'm on the outside. This is something interesting, and this is another reason why I teach that fourth guard I just showed you guys, where you're here, right? Here's why. Because if we're in a neutral zone, right, press, and I point at that shoulder, what happens to him? Does this position look familiar to you?
No, I'm pretty low.
Right? It's the reason why that happens. Now, did I create the angle? He did. So, and one interesting thing is, if I've got this, let me try to stand over here. If I've got this square frame, right, I've got a square torso, and I stick my arm out like this, in order to point at my opponent's opposing shoulder, I have to cross myself. So if he's on this side and I point on this side, he's going to get sucked in. If he comes around on this side, he's going to get sucked in because his own angle is going to collapse. I'll demonstrate because
Same but different.
Same but different. So rather than me creating the angle, my opponent is. So on the inside, press. On the inside, you create that angle, right? On the I create the angle. On the high inside, press.
I'm pushing myself.
You can't help it because the angle that he's creating is from here to here.
Yeah,
he's
to
crossing.
resist it, I'd have to pull in towards myself. And
Yes. Yeah.
that's counterintuitive.
Are you guys seeing that weird kind of change up there? Because it's going to be kind of important. Is that it leads to another kind of idea. Is that the straight line is strong, angles are weak. Lines collapse angles. Okay? Like broadly speaking, lines collapse angles. Angles can subvert lines. They can move around them. Okay? So don't try to fight your opponent with an angle. If you can, because yours is going to collapse. Okay. Any questions on that so far? Okay. I think. Do you guys want me to touch on parries real quick? Because I can give you guys like 4 parries for your 4 zones, and then that way you've got them to rely on, and they work for you. And then okay. Okay. Awesome. So. See this on guard position? This is also a parry. Right? If that line is closed, it's closed. So what is a parry? What is a parry? Somebody define a parry for me.
It's it's an action that closes off the line.
In tempo. That's almost exactly right. It's almost like word for word is what I was going to say. A parry is the closure of a line in tempo. That's really all it is, right? Now, there's a little bit of spin to it in that a parry you're only really going to do if you have to, right? But a closure of a line in tempo. So if I'm here, like facing her, this is just a closed line, I'm not parrying it. But if somebody does attack in that line, I just reset to that guard, and that line is closed. We're starting in a parrying position. So that's high outside. If they attack me on my upper right side, that's where we're going to be. And again, with the lefty, this is why we refer to it in relation to the blade, not the arm. So high inside is going to be here. So really all I'm going to do is translate this over here. Now, point of caution. Remember that corridor I was telling you about. You're going to pretend like there's a corridor that is literally only as wide as your shoulders are, and you're not going to leave it. Remember I was talking about getting that arm extended versus retracted? If you feel like you're too open, if you feel open, then you need to extend your arm a little further. You don't bring your blade wider, it means your blade needs to come out further. Okay? Real quick example. Alright? So, let's see here. So lunge to the inside, to my chest. Okay, here, right? And now, if you continue pressing that in, probably still could hit me, right? So my instinct is going to be to keep pushing this further out. So now he can't hit me, great. But now my point is also way out of presence. And he's a big dude, he might just punch me in the face or something. Right? We don't want that. So instead of parrying out further, because he can still hit me, instead, I extend my arm. That way my hand stays in the corridor, I'm using the minimal amount of action, my point is still at him, threatening him, okay? So if you feel like you need to over parry, and you're not covering yourself on that defense, extend more. Don't parry wider, extend further, okay? But that's where you're gonna be. So this all kind of makes sense? Just kind of seeing that? And this is also a guard. I could approach you this way, right? This line is closed. Now, I'm wide open over here, at least other questions, but yeah, it's a closed line. Make sense? This is a fourth parry or fourth guard, right? You can call it. So low line. You can do it pronated or supinated. I recommend doing it supinated. So she's really frustrated. She sees that I am covered in the high line. She can't get through here. Well, what else is open, really? She can attack underneath my sword. Now, whether that's suicidal or not, because she doesn't have control of my weapon, is another issue entirely. But she could, but this is open. She does have a direct line to that point. It's not physically covered. So if she reaches down, so point, means lunge, I'm gonna do this, okay? Now, some people will teach this. This kind of comes with its own set of problems, but I prefer here. Here it's very easy to flip up and do a riposte. Ideally, what I want to do, and we'll get into this when we're going to do offense, you want to also place your hand on the high line so she does not have recourse to that disengage to come back up. Now she's blocking. All I have to do is redirect my point. And back. So that's a low outside. The reason I don't recommend this one is because it opens up this wrist really badly. And then all she has to do is turn and land a cut right there. It's very easy for us. Like wide open. Here, if she tries to land that cut, I'm protected. Okay. And all of my responses are just as easy here. And if she decides she wants to be funny and like come into the high line, all I have to do is just return to my guard. Right? So that's low outside. Low inside. The opposite. So say she's feeling really suicidal because she's going to go and hit the furthest thing away from her. Like I almost never take an attack down here because it's a good 3-4 inches further away than the rest of my body is. But if she really wants it, then same thing here. Just on the other side. Again, hand up here so that if she disengages, she comes up into the hand. No big deal. Okay? So those are four parries that will cover a direct line attack on any one of those spots.
So the low inside, you're not even really bringing the elbow. It's just straight down.
That's it. Yeah, you want to keep that wrist close. Okay. Now, it's a really awkward thing to do, but I'm also reaching really far. Like odds are good I'm not going to pick that up. Yeah. So really. The best thing to do at that point is something else because I'll leave you guys with this thought. Are parries good? Are parries good? Do you like parries? Do we like to do parries?
No, it's a great attack.
we would rather do anything, like almost anything is more effective than making a parry, right? Because a parry means that you were open, which means you probably made a mistake up to this point. You had a huge opening of some kind, and now you're having to fix it. It makes you predictable. It puts you into what Fibers calls obedience, right? Because now I'm controlling you. You have to answer that, or you get run through. So you're in a position of obedience. You did not control the space between you and your opponent. So that's kind of where we're going to pick up next week. Is I've got these parries for you. They'll save your life in a pinch, but they're not how we want to fight.
Until you're in movies.
Unless you're in the movies, right? So instead, we're going to find other ways of getting to a point where we don't have to parry. Okay? And that's all I have. Any questions? Okay. Awesome. Great. Thank you, guys.
Whoever paid